Hello. I'm late. I'm actually not late, but I'm was away for longer than expected. Here we go. Here we go. Here we go. There we go. He's here. Boom. Let me plug in my earbuds to my other computer so I can keep myself entertained. I've long since given up on being running a tight ship here. This is mostly just like a log of me, or just a log to prove that I work on what I say I work on. Which is, I think it's fair in and of itself. I think that's a fair thing to want in and of itself. Let me see. What if I do, oh, don't look at this one. Cute Doragon. This one's actually kind of cool, but I'm not going to use it. I think I'm just going to try to clickbait people today, as I am wont to do. Let me see. We'll use Alicia Solid, the default. Oh geez, what the heck? File not found. Oh, I see. Well, see, now it's broken. Okay, give me one sec. I'm now inside of the screen. I see. It's good to know that it like does not immediately explode though. It's very cool. Ooh. Puppeteer. Assets. VRM models. Alicia. Ooh. There we go. Yeah. That's not so bad. I mean, it looks pretty good, I think. It looks pretty good. Alright. Alright. Let's get started. Let's get started. Although, do I not use the defaults? Oh, I usually turn down the rotation damp on these models, don't I? Like that. Okay. Otherwise, it's just a bit too strong. Yeah. Even with this, it's a bit too strong because I think I can turn my neck way too far around. But that's fine. Let me see. This is my Godot thing. Looks pretty good. Today what I'm going to be doing is a lot of refactoring. Or as much refactoring as is as makes sense, because I have now re-ascertained what I want to do with this. So here we have test pub sub, and I'm thinking I want to take out some of these classes because they don't really need to exist in global scope, right? So I think for all of these model things, they don't really need to exist in global scope. They just need to kind of hang out, if that makes any sense. So these pub sub register payloads and wrap datas and whatnots don't really need to exist on their own. Yeah. Let me see. I'm thinking we'll grab model pub sub. So register payload test. I'll move this over to this one because the API surface is the same. Test pub sub register payload. Yeah, it's like this is something that can definitely be just stored on the pub sub, right? So you'll register yourself. You can call functions on the pub sub as well. So there's no reason for this data to be separate, right? Yeah. Or even actually, yeah. Actually, now I'm thinking about it, the register payload doesn't really need to exist either. It's really something that should be stored here on the register thing, and then I just need to, yeah, I think I'm making this too complicated. The original design, a little too complicated. There's no reason to even have a register payload, I think. Right? Yeah. Like, it's nice, but most times you'll be using the dictionary. Right. Yeah. Yeah, that can be handled just here in the register function, I think. Oh, hello, Felipe. Hello, hello. How's it going? It's going all right. It's going all right. I'm trying to finish up a 090 release of this. So you might remember this program. It looks kind of ugly. The UI is not horrible, but it's been completely overhauled. So this is what it's supposed to look like now. Like so, right? So compared to, you know, semi-transparent, full screen, whatevers, now you have pop-ups. You can have multiple pop-ups and they'll all correspond to the same thing. So look at that, blah, blah. Oh, hello, Stonebee, hello, hello. And then you have all of these things that will also be applied to the model. Thank you for redeeming a hydrate. But yeah, how are you doing, Felipe? Looks good. No, you. I think I've been pretty dehydrated today. I don't know why. I drank like 3 liters of water in the past, ever since lunchtime, I think. Although I didn't really eat any lunch, I just drank like a lot of coffee for lunch. So I don't know. Looks good. Feeling hot. Nice. Yeah. Most of these things are hooked up for the bone stuff. Any of these that are, I guess, more specific to just manipulating the model aren't really hooked up properly. But I'm getting around to that. The last thing to do is hook up all the tracking things, which allows you to, you know, face track a model. But I think the design that I have is not bad. It's very plugin oriented. So most things are hot loaded at runtime. Yeah. Because contrary to popular belief, Godot is not sandboxed, so you can just load in arbitrary code whenever you want, which is what I'm taking full advantage of. So everything that's in the resources folder here, so face tracking, lip syncing, VRM model loading, those are all hot loaded. I relax myself with a Cold War. Yeah. How do you relax with a Cold War? Isn't that like over tensioning yourself? It's like the exact opposite. All right. Yeah, but right now, what I'm doing is I need to refactor a bunch of stuff. So I don't like this pattern where you need to register using a register payload. I thought I'd be more into it, but I think just with better documentation, or better documentation is really all you need. Otherwise, then you need to cross-reference between a bunch of classes, and Godot is just not very good at that. Yeah. It's a cute lolly. Oh, thanks. No, you. So I'll take this out. Payload can be a lot of things, and then we'll just have to think about... Give me the pub sub. Open up the pub sub here. Yeah, so we'll have to parse the payload. Yeah. So payload is not null. So payload is not null, then we'll need to parse the payload. Parsing the payload isn't too hard because it's just going to be this stuff here. So we'll do parse register payload. So we're changing this into basically whatever you want, right? So it can either be a string, an array, or a dictionary. So the two things that we're looking for are connection args and a callback function. Yeah. So this is some sort of data. We don't know what kind of data it is, but it is data. Yeah, and then we'll just return a dictionary afterwards. Yeah, that'll work. That's not how you spell dictionary. Goodbye, low poly duck. This is actually the reference model for VRM models. So that's what I base all of my changes off of. So anything else that just happens to work for other models is just nice to have. Yeah, I figured I might as well just catfish people. You know, the usual. Match type of data. So this one's not hard. Probably could just copy and paste these, right? So args, blah blah. This should be it's not data. It should be args. If not, args. I don't need to duplicate anything because these will be consumed immediately. Yeah. And then this one is also kind of wrong. Oh, actually, I copied this wrong as well. Yeah, but with the white makeup looks like Harley Quinn. Harley Quinn. Is it white makeup? I think it's just like the lighting is a bit too strong. Let me turn it down. Light energy. We can turn it down to like 3. Alright, that might be a bit too dark. 4. It looks more natural. All natural. Alright, so we can have any of these. That's fine. This one should be args. We don't want to duplicate. It doesn't make any sense since they are consumed immediately afterwards. And this one should be callback is equal to data. Yeah, that's not so bad. And then here we'll do a payload is not null. Then we'll do parse payload, parse register payload, right, and then parsed payload get args. It's not the greatest way of doing it, but it's pretty close. So it looks like I'm duplicating a bunch of logic here, but I'm not actually. Yeah, because I don't know what kind of payload I'm going to be passed, right? So this is actually a variant of the register payload to use. Can be a string, array, or a dictionary. where the string will be the callback, and then an array will be all the connect args. Yeah. So you can pass a string, which is just the callback, an array, which will be just the connect args, or you can pass a dictionary, which will contain both. Yeah. Can you tell me what section you're developing now? I'm refactoring the pub sub to be a bit cleaner. Yeah, because right now it's very complicated. So I am attempting to make it easier to use. Yeah, that's not so bad. Parses a payload for the register function. So, param data, which is some sort of variant, a string array or dictionary. String is interpreted as a callback. As connect args. Hopefully I can get this knocked out within the next 2 weeks so I can start making video games again. I really miss making video games. So I have a few game ideas I've been puzzling out in my head. I think they're all pretty okay. They're all pretty okay. I just need to find the time to do that. Because otherwise I've just been writing a lot of tooling, which is, you know, I like writing tooling, but I also like making games sometimes. Even though I haven't made a game in a few months now. Data, dictionary. Args and callback key. Whether or not they actually exist. I wonder if Felipe, you're still here. Did you ever find an answer to your GD native question? Yeah, GD native can be tough. Can be very tough. I think something that's always helped me when I'm doing it is just to scrap everything and just restart. Because sometimes things just break. Sometimes things just break. That's the joys of C++. Because I'm assuming you were doing C++. Never after 22 hours. Oof. I don't know. Like, do you have to use C++? Because check this out. Actually, I probably shouldn't show this off on stream because it's going to break some stuff, but check this out. So, I've always used Rust. So Rust usually seems to work based on my experience. But if you look at, I'm just going to open this up in Notepad because it's a bit easier. But check this out. This is completely unrelated, but I wanted to see if having multiple windows in Godot was doable. Right? So here is my native lib done in Rust. So we have, ignore the standard thread that's not used, but I'm using Dioxys, which is a web view library. So it uses its own window, and it technically needs to be on the main thread, but you can just kind of force it. So ignore this. This is just the React style web view stuff. So you have an H1 high 5 counter with the counts. The count comes from the state. So it's a stateful element. You have a button on click, whatever. And then here we have our native class. We implement our native class, so we always need to have a new function, whatever. We have our init function because I made it a reference here. And then launch, which is exported, as you can see by the annotation. So it'll run Dioxys desktop launch. So it'll try to launch the app. There's our init function, which is all handled by this Godot init macro. So this will look familiar if you have done the C++ stuff, right? Handle, add class, my view, etc., etc. Now that's pretty much it. So when I run this, so this is my GD script. So on ready, I have a button, which is this button here that says click me. There's a counter, which is just a label that's floating out in the middle of nowhere. So I connect it. So whenever I click this button, the counter counts up, of course. Then here is the fun part. I preload my native script, create a new one, store it in my view, then call my view launch, which if I remind you, launch will launch my new window, which is completely separate from Godot's window. So check this out. I'm pretty sure this is going to break something. All right, so look at that. So now we have two windows. You do need to wiggle the Godot window if you want it to update, but now we can count up with our separate Rust application. And then also, look at this. So it does not update in real time, but if you wiggle it, it will update. So it's very small, but whenever I click it, the number is increasing. So something that is also kind of interesting, you might notice that this window does not have a title. That's because most applications need to run, or most windows on Windows, most application windows need to run in their own thread or on the main thread. Godot also expects to be running on the main thread, which is why this window did not finish initializing. I don't really know how to get around that besides rolling my own display thingy. In theory, it should be possible. But anyways, we can kill this, which will kill this thread. Actually, I should just... one of these will break... One of these will leave a zombie process, and one of these will just work. I forget which one, though. I think if I close it from here, it should just work. Yeah, that was probably it. We'll have to check. So if I drag this window over... Okay, so I do not have a zombie process. That's good. Yeah, it's very complicated, unfortunately. Have to be very, very, very exact about how you handle it. But yeah, so even though Godot 3 does not support multi-window, you can try to force it. That's for a project which is not mine. Contracting gig, is it? Other person working on it with me is using Linux and it does run well, but for some reason mine misses DLLs. I don't know. Hard to say. Hard to say. If you have git bash installed, I think, file, yeah, you can try running file on it and see if it's actually a DLL. Because sometimes, like, you'll compile something, it'll call it a DLL, but it's not actually a DLL. So calling file on like this thing, like file license, right? Tells me that it's ASCII text with, Windows, what is it, carriage return line feed, line terminators, right? Because technically I can call these things whatever I want, right? So if I do like move license to license.dll, right? Windows will be confused. Yeah, Windows will be confused, but your command line will never lie to you. Well, almost never lie to you. Sometimes it'll lie to you, but in this one instance, it will not lie to you. So I guess that's another thing you can check. Is maybe your compiler lied to you and it actually compiled a .so file, or maybe it compiled a dilib file. but then just renamed it to be a DLL for whatever reason. I forget what DLLs are called on Windows, or I guess what they return. Ignore this. Which one of these uses a dilib? Live 2D. This one uses a dilib. Oh yeah, or a DLL. So if you do file, Godot cubism, a PE32 executable DLL Gui. Oh, actually, it's 32-bit, huh? Not 64-bit. That's weird. Gui. Okay, well, DLL. Yeah, I don't know. I'm again once again out of ideas. It seems weird though, because it did compile a DLL. But did not give you what you were expecting. A little to think about that. These things happen sometimes, I suppose. Alright, so register this thing. We can do this, and then we can also just pass in a raw dictionary. Looked at the dependencies using an open source software and it threw me some missing ones. Looked at Google and found nothing. Well, your dependencies shouldn't matter, right? Unless you are dynamically linking your DLL with other DLLs. In which case, I'm not sure. Right? Because that's actually how Godot works, right? Godot dynamically, or that's how Godot C# works, is it dynamically links with Godot sharp. Or I've actually compiled a build of Godot that dynamically links with spouts, which allows you to forward on any OpenGL texture handle to anything else in the application. Is that my DLL? It's Windows DLL, my DL links. Yeah. So you have your DLL is dynamically linking, and so you have like a weird DLL chain, right? That's hard to say. It's hard to say. And Z is missing. What is Z? Is it possible that you're trying to link with a Linux executable or a Linux library, even though you're on Windows? Yeah. I'm not familiar with dynamically linking like a giant DLL chain. Like, I don't see any reason why it wouldn't work, but I guess that is the issue that you're running into. All right, so register payload doesn't need to be updated. That'll just work. So then if we go back to, actually, I don't need to go back to here. We can just run guts, run the current scripts. Please work. Ooh, okay. That's good. What is it? Is it quit? Help. Q. Hey, quit. Hey, quit. 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 Q. 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 Break. Break me. I would like to exit. What the heck? Ooh. Step out of the current frame. Thin. Breakpoint. Q. How do I get out? Alright, just kill it. Ooh. Why can't I quit? I have, this is why I don't like running my gut tests from VS Code, is I don't know how to get out. Don't know, yeah. That's the joys of C++ programming. My GD native lib in a GD native script file directly transfer me from a Linux system. I mean, as long as Godot is able to parse it, right? As long as your GD native library shows up correctly, it shouldn't be the problem. Well, and then also assuming that you have your entries filled out correctly. How do I get out of here? Kill me. Kill. Exit. I don't know how PowerShell works. Or do I have a breakpoint in on standard error? Why would I have a breakpoint here? Yeah. What the heck? I do even got the autocomplete working? Yeah, I'm not sure. It's not too hard to recreate those files though, so it's possible. It's, you know, because you're running on Windows. So it's expecting the carriage return along with the line feed, basically CRLF instead of just LF on pretty much every other, not every other system. Doesn't OS X Mac use double carriage return or something like that? Reason breakpoints. I would like to exit, please. How do I don't want to kill the current shell. I mean, I guess I can just kill the current shell, that's fine, and then I'll just need to look for the zombie process afterwards. That happens sometimes. So, do you still exist? Who still exists? Do you still? Landing screen, text scene. Okay. It's possible that there's still a zombie process here. I'm almost 100% sure that this is a zombie process. So we'll kill it. Okay. Okay. We might be crashing. We might be crashing. Okay. Yeah. Yeah. I know what happened is because there was probably some sort of error, because I'm using a custom build of Godot, by the way. So I'm redirecting all standard out and standard error into this function here on standard error because I have a custom redirect singleton. Look at this. So on every standard out or standard error, then I can catch it. And that's just a signal. So I guess there was an error somewhere. I don't really know where I can get those logs though. Maybe it, no, it won't show up here. It might show up in the direct test. So I go to tests, utils, pub sub, and then just run this test manually. Okay. Non-existent function error and base nil. Oh, that's interesting. So why doesn't my app manager have a logger? Unhandled pub sub param. What is the data I got passed? What the heck? Okay. Register. Oh, I see. All right, kill this from the editor. Config manager. Oh, it's using one of these. Okay, so this is an easy fix. Just get rid of this. I see. It's weird how it wouldn't let me step past this though. All right. So append array and base array cannot convert argument 1. Oh, I see. So this one should just be pass in a default. That's good enough. Oh, what am I doing? Go back to gut. Test pub sub. We're looking for all green. Run all. Should be all green. Okay. Non-existent function broadcast update label text. To do pull label. Yeah. Okay, so toggle tracker. Toggle tracker pass. Okay. So I can add that back in. I feel like this stuff isn't great though. All right, pass me. All right, so only one failure, and then there's also an interpolation data failure as well. I don't know what's going on with that. This one, we'll add a to do. We'll just comment this out. All right, so we run it all again. That failure goes away. Now interpolation data is starting to fail. And I've seen this before. Sometimes this fails in my GitHub action builds as well. I don't really know what's going on with that. So I can look at this. Look at the gut test, Docker test. It says all tests pass. All tests pass. Eh? Eh? Oh, I see. Maybe. What is this? Oh, it's because of this script error. Oh, and I forgot to take it out. Oh, because whenever it starts up on the extension manager, which is how I'm handling all my hot loaded resources, it's loading in OpenCFace, and then it sees this function, tries to parse it, and then fails. Interesting. I see. But now sometimes interpolation data just kind of fails for whatever reason. I'm not sure why. Let me see. Interpolation data. So that looks about right. I don't know. And then interpolation data. So test interpolation data. What was the error? So line 136. Assert interpolation data, bone translation interpolation rates. Bone interpolation rate should be 0.5. It's weird how this is the only one that failed, perhaps. Or maybe it's not even subscribing to the right values. Yeah, that could be it. That could be it. Right. So listen values, blah, blah. And then we listen for all of these things. Oh, it's because this doesn't exist anymore. Or it's no longer accepted, I should say. So this is failing as well. So all right, let's go through the entire code base, find everything that uses this, and then take it out, because I think it's just super extraneous, or, you know, super not necessary. So pub sub register payload. That's fine. We'll get rid of that. This one we need to take out. Yeah, because everything just uses the dictionary register anyways, which I should probably start looking into. You know, maybe it's just not necessary anymore. Take this out. Where's the other one? There we go. And then there's the test register payload, which is fine, I suppose. Bone. Okay, so I'll take this out as well. Yeah, so everything. Yeah, you might notice that everything is using the dictionary way, because there's pretty much, there's almost no instance where you would ever want to use the defaults. So it's an example of very over-engineered design, unfortunately. All right, so we'll get rid of this. That's fine. Oh, actually, no one could see what I was looking at. Oh, because I'm not using my dual window display. Or I'm not using my dual window scene in OBS. All right, so we can go into model. Actually, before we do that, we'll go back to VS Code. I think this is okay. We'll get rid of the test really quickly, just because the test is useless. All right, so we'll get rid of all of these. Move all these files, give it a save. Da, da, da. That's fine. There it goes. Say goodbye. Model. Where is it? Model. Pub sub. Is that pub sub wrap data? Does anyone use this? No one uses this. Okay. Yeah, I think I can just get rid of this, no problem. So we'll go to model, pub sub, say goodbye. Yeah, and there we go, I think. And then we'll just need to yeah. I think that's okay. We can run it again. Pub sub wrap data. Oh, okay. Then we need to change this. So interpolation data should be fine now. Pub sub. This is now signal payload. So this is pub sub signal payload. Yeah. So that should be fine. Okay. What is this? This is a test. It's one of the test config manager. So pub sub register. No, this is signal payload. One of these should be okay. All right, all green. I'm still conflicted though. I don't think that that's a very good design. I don't think that's a very good design. Maybe there should be like like this itself should be wrapped. So whenever you want to broadcast something, it should be like you can directly emit from the pub sub, or you can use the function instead, which will also do the same thing. So directly emitting data from your pub sub will bypass the signal payload, and then that should still be valid, right? But then that's starting to get too complicated, right? Let me think. I also got to use the restroom really quick. I'll be BRB. We're back. Let me see. We'll just have like a broadcast. So broadcast will use the signal payload. Yeah. So broadcast, some sort, well, broadcast using the signal name, which is how we'll know what to emit, and then also just our data. Turn a result. Yeah, okay. So if you call broadcast on the pub sub, where pub sub means publish subscribe, I guess it should be called broadcast or publish, right? Publish. And actually, register should be called subscribe, because you are subscribing something to a signal, right? It's a pub sub, so you're not registering something, you are subscribing to something. Okay, let's actually go into here. Do a really quick find and replace. This needs to be very specific. So it's only these things. And then we can actually take out high level architecture. We don't want that one. We'll do subscribe. So this one, take out. Okay, so I think that's about right. Replace everything. Yeah, there we go. It is beautiful. So now we're subscribing. And then we'll have a corresponding publish function. Yeah. Then here we need to do if not has user signal name, or not has signal name. Results error, give me the error stuff. All right, so these are all the pub sub things. So pub sub signal not found. What does pub sub plugin already exist? Do I even use that? Pub sub signal not found. All right, so error pub sub signal not found, signal name. Yeah, this is one of my favorite patterns, actually. After doing a lot of Rust, I really like doing this. So you always have a results. And I think this is the only way to do safe programming in Godot, because Godot expects or follows the philosophy of fail fast, right? So in your exported game, you should never, you know, expect an error. You should just not have errors, which is really tough to work around. It makes sense, right? In bigger projects, you always want to fail fast instead of, you know, silently failing and then wondering in the future, you know, where did my error come from? You know, if you accidentally add an error in your most recent code, you should know about it immediately, which makes sense. But in Godot, or like big projects like this, it's not possible. Right? So instead, I have results. So any void function, or really any function at all, will always return a result. So if I don't get a value back from a function, then I know the function failed. And then I can check the results. And if the result is an error, then I know the function failed as well. So I know that it was handled. And then from that error, I can bubble it up until like it hits the logger. Right? So it's like Golang style error handling, except even worse. Because at least Golang, I don't think Golang panics. I think Golang, well, yeah. Yeah, most primitive functions in Golang will always return an error. Like that's handled for you. Whereas Godot, maybe, sometimes. You never really know. Yeah, you kind of have to do it yourself. So it's Golang on steroids in terms of error handling. But this is the best I've got. So publish. What we're doing here is if you call publish, this will create a signal payload, and then everything should try to use this, I suppose. I think I can do a set get, and then we can do like a get data. Get data to return. Well, There's no reason to use a set get, huh? Yeah, never mind. Ignore that. Because you can directly access the data. There's no reason to wrap it behind just a property Java style. Yeah, I don't know what I was thinking. But here, we have our signal name, and then we'll want to construct our payload. So var payload, which is a signal payload. Actually, we can just do emit signal, signal name, signal payload, new. And then we always need to have 3 values. But then here's the hard part, is I'm not sure how I want to do these things. So this one, like, it's pretty easy, right? We just always add the signal name along with the payload, like so. We can even switch it up like this, so it's a bit more ergonomic. Signal name, but then how do I want to do this data, right? Because I need to unpack it somehow. I suppose I can always force it to be a dictionary, but that seems really clumsy to me. We can make it an array. So it's var args by default. But I'm not a huge fan of doing that. We could always do like ID, which is null. So we don't know what the ID is, but we'll always have the signal name, data, and ID. So yeah, I suppose this is good enough, right? Where the ID is used for figuring out what we're interacting with when we hit the model config stuff. So the model config, we have, I've changed it so there's no more arrays, but if you change like an additional bones to track thing, right? How do you know what thing was changed if you just pass the entire array, right? Because that's the easiest way, because how everything works here is that we just, whenever something is changed, we pass the entire data structure along. Because it's just easier to handle things that way. So for most of these values, which are just like, okay, like it's a Boolean, it's a float, it's a string, some of these are strings, it's a string, right? It's easy. All you need to do is emit, you emit the name of the value plus its new value, and then that should be handled automatically. However, when you are emitting collections or something like a transform, I need to think about that. I'm just now realizing that I haven't handled transforms yet. How do you handle a transform? Or can you do like a get on a transform? I've never tried that. Yeah, okay, hold on. This is where having a REPL would be really nice, because I'm not familiar with this. I've written a REPL before, but I've just never tried this specific instance. All right, so we can get rid of most of these. I just need the, well, we don't need to get rid of this, that's fine. But we have tx, which is some sort of transform. We don't care what it is, we'll just do a new transform. And then how do you access arbitrary data on the transform? Like I'm pretty sure you can't do a get on it, right? Oh, sorry, there's no new on this. Right, tx, yeah, there's no get on it, right? Yeah, because this is a primitive type in Godot. It's only objects. Any object has gets, but how do I grab arbitrary data from a primitive value? Is there a way of doing that? Because I don't know what values I'll actually be using. It's hard to say. Or actually, you know what? In this instance, it doesn't matter. Right, because it is a primitive, I can just send it along. Yeah, never mind. What am I talking about? Because it's a primitive, I just send the entire thing along. Never mind, I'm overthinking it once again. But look at how much code there is. Well, ignoring the tests. Yeah, I guess this will work, yeah. So if you emit a transform, just don't pass along an ID because it doesn't matter. The ID is only ever needed for collections. A transform is not a collection. The only collections you have in Godot, or you normally have access to, are dictionaries and arrays. Yeah. And then kind of a vector. Vector 2s and vector 3s are technically collections, but we'll just ignore that. Let's see. Actually, yeah, never mind. Just handle arrays and dictionaries. Why am I being so weird about this? So if ID isn't null, else empty string or null. Yeah, one of these. So the only things we handle are collections. The only collections that this handles are arrays and dictionaries. All right, one of these days, I will finish up my documentation generator, or I will polish the documentation generator, I should say. And then this will generate a really nice markdown document for me to work with. One day. It more or less works, but then I was playing around with it on GitHub. I was like, oh, you can actually nest like expandable menus. So you can have expandable menus inside of expandable menus. So I need to rethink my documentation generation strategy. Because right now, I'm able to generate most dictionaries, or dictionaries from all these, you know, double # doc strings. So pretty much like this would be a dictionary, right? So we have the description, we have the param, anything. So the description is anything here. Once we hit a @, then we're inside of like I guess specific key territory. So anything here is part of the param key. Anything under it is part of the previous param key. You know. So those dictionaries are more or less parsed correctly, or those sets of data are parsed correctly. It's just the markdown generation, which is really messing with me. So publish. So it's a. You know what? If we go into AMPS omit. All right, don't replace anything just yet. Don't look for the entire word just yet, but omit signal. So maybe what I should be doing is just passing everything through the publish signal. That'll simplify processing a lot more. It's a bit more cumbersome to work with, for sure. But at least here, then I can make a few guarantees about how data is used. Yeah. So emits a signal with the given data with an optional data ID if the data is a collection. Yeah. So that's a variance. ID also a variance. So variants are not instantiable via GD script. At least in Godot 3. I haven't really tested variants in Godot 4, but I think it's the same way. To emit on. So signal name is the name of the signal to emit on. Of course, the data to pass along with the signal. The ID to be used. The signal payload. See. Signal payload. So I think the only things that Godot 4 has support for in terms of doc strings are description, which is very strange. And there's also, it's not going to be backported, but I've mentioned that about 1 million times. I think I will, once I hopefully get this out, I'll investigate backporting it. Because the logic should be about the same. Yeah, but this is also the syntax that they're using in Godot 4. So you need to have double # or double hash sign, then @ description : otherwise it'll be ignored. Which is kind of weird if you ask me, but you know, whatever. So returns a result, which is result integer, the error code. Yeah, okay. So here, base config, this doesn't really need to exist. I'll go into here, bum bum. So we're no longer just doing a raw emit, now we're publishing using the pub sub. I think that makes more sense. Just making sure that everything is correct here. Pub sub wrapped data, that's not correct. Yeah, that's not correct. It's close though, it's close. Yeah, you know what, let's send it. So this, it's commented out so it doesn't matter. VRM model, headbone, where headbone is probably a string. Signal name value to float, yeah, publish, yeah, that sounds about right. Additional bones, I'll need to go into this later. So that's in bones GD. Yeah, that's probably throwing an error right now because this no longer exists. Default model path, that's probably a string. Signal name, state, signal name, bone interpolate. Yeah, send it. All right, consider yourself sent. All right, then we'll go to here. This one, get rid of this. This additional field's no longer needed. Yeah, I think this feels a lot simpler, at least to me. So we don't need all of these fancy extras. Yeah, so now yeah, that feels pretty good. That feels pretty good. I just need to check that everything still passes. Passed argument type. Okay, so this changes. So we passed the signal name first now, which is more in line with what you would expect. Send me. Don't send me. Ooh, I need to reload the editor. Okay. Okay. Non-existent function, get data, and base reference. What is the reference? What is data? Signal name. Is it not called get data? Did I change that? Oh, there is no get data. It's just called data, right? And then I'm also changing this so it's always going to be it's always going to be data, data. Data, data. So that's slightly more correct as well, so run me. Ugh. Okay. So set both rates. Let me see. So this is on one of the tests, blah, blah. So we publish this. So anything that comes to us from the... Anything that comes to us from this thing. Okay. That's a bit tough. That's a bit tough. I gotta think about that. Yeah, I mean, thinking about it. If this is Rust, this would be really easy, right? Because you can just set like a deref, or you can implement a certain trait, so dereference it automatically. But this is not. Yeah, so I know what's happening, right? So this is expecting a float, or this is expecting a something, right? So set both rates. Actually, shouldn't this be a? Shouldn't that be a float? Why didn't I do anything with it? So data, which should be a pub sub signal payload, and then we'll do var values equal to data data. That kind of sucks. That kind of sucks. But I also don't want to override like get. Or even like unwrap. That would be very confusing, I think. Yeah, I mean, it'll have to work. Send me once again. All right. So class pub_sub was found in global scope, but its script could not be loaded. Is pub_sub throwing me an error? Or are there errors? Reload me. Sometimes this happens as well. Guts, run all. I said run all. Hey, pub_sub was okay. And it doesn't matter, right? I mean, it does matter, but I know that this will work. Why isn't it able to find it? That's very strange. Yes. All right, it's a reference. I know that for sure. I could probably break this out into its own function as well so that I get a lot better. I hate doing that, but okay, we can do that. Test config manager is throwing an error. What is your problem? Yeah. It just absolutely hates it for some reason. All right, let's move this back to model. So we'll just drop this into here. So this is pub, or this is signal payload. Sure, why not? Reference, create me, signal payload. Get rid of all of these defaults because it's very simple, right? There is your doc string, blah blah, class name, signal payload. So then we just need to change config manager. This is now a signal payload, that's fine. So you change. We'll go into here, you get yeeted, say goodbye. And then we should be able to run all, maybe, no. Float does not match the function's expected argument type. That makes sense as well. So we go back to here. This is now signal payload. So everything must use a signal payload. I think that makes sense. Or at least something that extends a reference and then has roughly the same API surface, right? All right, but then the problem here is, yeah. Okay, so this will not come to me as a thing, but then also because we're sending everything as a signal payload, we'll never really need to pass along the signal name as well. So maybe my plan is starting to fall apart right in front of my eyes. Interpolation data. So data, if data is signal payload data. So this is okay. So this maintains a lot of the niceness, shall we say. I think a lot of these don't actually need to. A lot of these don't need to be so specific. Yeah, so like this one could just be like emit signal, right? Emit signal. Like that's pretty easy. Don't save me. Oh, that's a replace preview. Yeah. Where is it? Base pop-up tree layouts. Yeah. Get me out of here. All right, send me back. Not everything needs to use it, but you can if you want. And then everything that I build will need to take into account that you could be using both. I don't know if this is a good idea or not. I'm kind of conflicted. Because on one hand, just emitting the signal name plus some data is really nice, right? But on the other hand, being able to wrap data so that you know what to expect is also really nice. So, it's so hard. It's tough. It's tough. So many decisions to be made. This one should be signal payload. So this one will always be looking for signal payload. That's fine. All right, run me again. Ugh. Base float. Okay, so now we'll need to check. So data, if data is signal payload, else just data. We'll do the same thing here. So you can emit a raw piece of data over the pub sub, or you can pass along a signal payload, which has a lot more data on it. Yeah, I don't know. Something doesn't seem right about that. I gotta think about that. I gotta think about it. Is there a better way of doing this? We go back to here, we can run all the things again. Ignore the debugger. I think there, I am just, yeah, I intentionally have stuff break in my tests, so that's fine. That is something that I've noticed a lot of beginners get caught up on, is that they'll ask a question, be like, why isn't my code working? You know, there's no errors in this file. And then you'll ask them like, oh, okay, are there any other errors in your project though? Yeah, I have a few errors in my project, but there's no errors in this one file. It's like, what are you doing? You know, if you're a beginner, you should always fix every single error possible. If you know what you're doing, right, if you are experienced, I would not call myself an expert, although I probably do a lot more advanced techniques than most other Godot people. I'm willing to say that. Put my reputation on the line. Then you can ignore errors. Like, these are expected errors. But if you're a beginner, you should never have any expected errors. Yeah. I'm willing to say that since I have written a few engine modules and libraries, etc., etc. Let me see though. Update values. All right, let's change this really quick. This is really easy. Low hanging fruit, right? So called. And I really like typing. We're typing on this keyboard with the new keycaps. Now that I'm somewhat more familiar with it, feels pretty good. Did not know that replacing keycaps would make this much of a difference, but it does. Yeah, I don't know if this is like a placebo or effect, but it also feels like I double press keys a lot less. Although, you know, could totally be a placebo. You never know. All right, one of these had a bunch of just horrible looking doc strings. Let me see if I can find it. Which one was it? It was one of you. Was it you? Was it you? It was you. Okay. Gotta take the easy wins when you can. So whenever I get around to finishing my documentation generator, this will generate some truly phenomenal pieces of documentation. Of course, it's never done. Programmers' work is never done, unfortunately. Default. All right. I think also these things, I'm not actually sure if they're executed or not. I was looking at the Godot source, and I want to say like these standalone strings are actually evaluated as a string. Like, they don't do anything, but they're still evaluated whenever you call the function. So the fact that I have so many doc strings is probably starting to add up. That's just what I've gathered from reading the source. Whereas these, you know, comments are actually parsed, so that, you know, they still contribute to load time, but execution time, they don't, you know, they're ignored. Whereas these multi-line strings are parsed and then also just executed as a string, I think. I'm pretty sure. Maybe I missed something though. Maybe I misread. Pretty good, pretty good. Most things don't use the button. I'll need to look into that later, but later is not now. pulling the arg value from the config manager. Beautiful. I wonder if these should also be returning results, because that's not always the case. Yeah. I'll think about it. I'll think about it. Parameter. Param meter. There we go. Value by the args value. Oh, thank you very much, Yusa, for the host. Much appreciated. Nice avatar. Oh, thank you, thank you. I tried my best on it. It was a lot of hard work pulling it from the reference repo. How are you? How are you? I think while I'm at it, you might notice I'm just retyping a lot of this stuff, and that's because I am retyping a lot of this stuff. My GDScript documentation generator for Godot 3 is more or less good to go. Needs a few more tweaks, which is why it's not activated right now. But it should be backwards compatible with Godot 4, which is the plan. Nice. Thanks. No, you. Yeah, I was talking about this earlier, but apparently I think these are a single operation during parsing, whereas these are not. Well, these are still parsed. Like, both of these are parsed, but I think this actually contributes a single operation, which is a string with that has no effect, but it's just called, I think. Don't quote me on that, but judging from the source, I'm pretty sure that's how it works. Fine, Corona's not kicking my butt as much as I expected, so I'm glad. Do you feel you with rewriting a lot of stuff? Yeah. Well, check it out. We're still, oh baby, 294 tests passing. 1 expected error, which is a JSON parse error, which is good. Yeah, I hope you get better from your virus. I am 80% sure that I got the Omicron. Was it Omicron or was it Delta? Which is the one that was it was very, very infectious, but not super lethal. Well, I suppose COVID by itself isn't super lethal, but it was very infectious. It's not like SARS or whatever. Omicron, yeah. Like right after I saw my family for Christmas, so earlier this year, I had like a fever. I had a really bad fever for 3 days, and then I just had like a horrible cough for about 2 weeks, which leads me to think that I might have had it. I might have also just got like the flu or something. They're very similar diseases, to be sure, or very similar viruses. The flu is a virus, of course. Yeah. I remember the night before my fever broke, it got really, really bad. And I was just starting to worry at some point, like maybe I should like ask someone to give me Gatorade, because I am, in like the past 6 hours, I've drank like 12 liters of water. Like that's a lot of water to pass through one person. to snake case. Let me see. So I think we're still good here. And then I have the required infrastructure to handle this stuff. Yeah, so we have signal payload, which is basically a struct, right? So has a signal name, the data, also duck typed, and then the ID, which is null by default, I suppose. So we'll do null. So that's fine, right? And then we'll, you know, consume it as fast as possible as well. But if you pass along an array but don't pass along an ID, then that's considered an error. Yeah, okay. I think that makes sense to me. Yeah, so this allows me to fail fast. So if I ever try to pass along or try to emit some data that is a collection, so if it's an array and I don't pass along an integer, that's considered an error. If I pass along a dictionary and I don't pass along a string, that's also considered an error, because I need to know which elements I was changing at the time. Yeah, okay, this is accidentally a really good solution, I think. Yeah, thankfully I don't have any symptoms, just tiredness, brain fog, and a little bit of joint pain. Could be much worse. Isn't that just called a hangover? No, I suppose it's not really a joking matter, huh? But it's pretty. It's weird how many, I guess, symptoms a hangover has with a lot of common illnesses. Really makes you think, doesn't it? Oh, I see it with humor. Okay, thanks. Gotta be acknowledged. I should probably be a bit more delicate with how I talk about that, but you know. Okay. Seeing a lot of red here. Is this okay? Is this okay? Lip sync manager should probably blow up, and remote control manager should also probably be blowing up, but that's fine for now. Tests. This should be okay. This should be okay. Okay, so we're still good. I think the only thing I need to do now is, well, the bone stuff is also not so bad. Yeah, the bone stuff is also not so bad because we go to bone display. Interpolation data should be fine. Actually, now that I've refactored a bunch of this stuff, let's stop working. Where am I at? 2 deleted things, that's fine. Actually, 4 deleted things. Not able to count. Which is the pub sub specific objects, and then there's also just the signal payload, which is also pub sub related, but you know, we'll just ignore that for now. Git add all. So I fixed a bunch of stuff, and also this should cause CI to start passing builds. Let's just go to here. I need to get rid of the GIF. The GIF is whatever Chrome is doing with GIFs. It causes the browser tab to hang. So refactor how pub sub signal payloads work. Add more doc strings. All right, so push me. Bring me back to the code. Bring me to refactor super cleanup. And then we're just gonna stare at the CI. I should probably one of these days go into here and then use the latest gut as well. Because I'm pretty sure I'm not using the latest gut. Or maybe it's just because, oh, you know, no, this is using Croconut Godot Tester Master. Maybe Godot Tester Master is not updated to the latest gut. I was waiting for a hosted runner to come online. All right, so this will take a little bit. I guess someone's CI build is taking a long time. Well, we'll keep this on the back burner and we can look at it once it comes online. Because CI has actually been failing for the past few days. I know why. It's because of the hot loaded elements on my project. Or it's like runtime load. It's not really hot loading. Although Godot does support hot loading. My application does not. Okay, so app manager, get rid of that. Open CFace data. We'll think about it. We're not implementing that just yet. But here in the GUI tracking. Okay, so tracking doesn't actually have a script associated with it just yet. That is something I need to work on so I can possibly unblock other people. Suppose it... Oh, actually, did it run? It did run. Let's go. Look at that. 288 passed, 0 failed. We do skip the GD native stuff because I only... There's nothing to test in the GD native stuff, right? Because I don't upload DLLs or SO files because that's just bad practice. I suppose I could, in the same container, specify that like some Rust stuff should be pulled as well, like Rust up in cargo, or Rust up, Rust C, etc. But that's not needed. That's pretty good. That's pretty good. It's a 1 per pass rate. Very good. You love to see it. All green on CI. We'll go back to tracking. All right, so tracking, I need to think about this. Or actually, does tracking not... Actually, most of these actually... Yeah, interesting. I remember I was thinking about this. Is maybe like some of these should... Like I should have like a base pop-up in addition to a base pop-up tree layout, because base pop-up tree layout does have some special stuff associated with it. Oh, and there is a base pop-up, but base pop-up tree layout is kind of its own thing. Okay. So like maybe this should be renamed to base pop-up layout tree, which extends from a base pop-up layout, because not everything needs to be a tree. I don't know, something about the name rubs me the wrong way. I'm not sure why. That's neither here nor there. Bone display, just go away. We'll figure it out later. Bones, we'll figure it out later. Runner trait, pretty much all of this stuff we'll figure it out. Tracking, though. Tracking should be roughly on the same level as model. I think it's really only bones that's like special. Well, bones and the, you know, props. What do I call them here? So we go here. Default runner, GUI, props. Okay, so props and presets are also somewhat special. I'll think about that. So model, you have a bunch of stuff. There's not a great way around this besides like just having a dictionary somewhere and then tagging various elements. I think it's more efficient to do it this way though. Yeah, like I could just have a const at the very top and then be like, you know, these are all the elements, you know. Okay, this looks bad, but I'm pretty sure this is the most efficient way to do it. Short of going into model. You know, I could do something like this, where I go into each thing, add it to a specific group in the inspector. Yeah, I suppose I could do that as well, but then I would need to snake case every single one of these. Yeah, I suppose, yeah, if I went into the editor, and then for every single node, changed its node group to something. Maybe like a pub sub. So we'll add it to like a pub sub, or not pub sub, a config data group, model config group, right? And then we'll just hook it up via that. So then you can do is it like get tree, get nodes in group? Yeah. But then there's no way to tell, because it is based off of the tree, because that's only a scene tree function, right? Get tree. That's get nodes in group is a scene tree function. Get nodes in group. Yeah, that's a scene tree function. So I can't guarantee that all these nodes will be children of this specific node. Yeah. So this is the best way of doing it, because the thing that I'm connecting them to is very specific. Although, yeah, no, because Bones uses the same logic as well. Yeah, because this also extends base public tree layout. Maybe it shouldn't, and then I can reuse it. Think about it. I'll think about it. All right, yeah, I've convinced myself this is the best way of doing it, even if it looks horrible. All right, so tracking. How did I do this one? This one I just had a tree and a VBlocks container, which I can probably get rid of, since really what this should be is like a bunch of separate types of things. So that we'll have like we'll call this like the landing, right? If we go to Bones, what do I call it? Yeah, there's just like info, and then everything else is auto-generated. So in the same way, this should be the same way. So landing, we'll call this info, right? So we'll change that to a scroll container. VBlocks, that's not so bad. It's not so bad. Get out of here. There we go. So there's your info, and then everything else is auto-generated. Yeah. And then we also don't need to hold on to it, I think. So what do we have in Bones? How am I doing this? Actually, no, we do need to hold on to it. Do I hold on to info? I do hold on to info. Okay, so here I should also hold on to. I wonder why. Oh, yeah. Okay, so I need to do this in a separate step. I remember now. I need to do these in a separate step because onReady variables in an inherited class are called in a separate pass, right? So here, this is the superclass. We have ready and then setup, right? And then this is setup, blah, blah. This setup function is called, this is actually not the ready function, this is a setup function, but this is called before any onReady things are called in this subclass. So even if I call this onReady var info scroll container, blah, blah, got the node path, it actually runs on a separate step. It doesn't work how you think it would work, but if you do it like this, it will work. It's one of the many oddities that you'll have with the node initialization system in Godot, which is kind of why it's hard to work with Paxine sometimes, right? An editor-only workflow will kind of burn you. So there's your info page. That's pretty easy. So go back to here. So there's your info page. I don't know what I would even want to display on here. And then similar to the bone page, I need to think about what I want to display on there. So I think for bones, what I was thinking is I would display, so let's add it to do, right? Display bone information. Something like that, right? Shouldn't be too bad. But then... I guess we'll do the same thing here, or maybe, yeah, this should probably just display information about like the current running trackers. So potentially you can have one-to-many trackers running. We'll think about it. Yeah, that's pretty much it, right? Just to make sure that this loads in properly. All right, yeah, okay, cool. And then also, just to make sure, we'll go to default runner, GUI, there's your bones, to do display bone information, beautiful. Then we have all these things, interpolation rate 0, 100. There's no tracking happening, so who cares? All right, so everything else needs to go inside of the script. Okay. All right, I called this info, right? Okay. Initial page is info page. Yeah. What is your problem? Initial page, initial page. All right. Then tree. Okay, so because this is a base pop-up tree layout, we do have all of this other stuff. Why am I not calling the initial setup? It's because I don't have any pre-setup pages, because I need to generate the pages myself. So this is following how bones work. Yeah, that's fine, I guess. That's fine. That's fine. Nothing wrong here. All right, and we'll do the same thing that we did with the tree stuff. Tree creates item, and then we also just have just a pages dictionary available on it. Yeah. So pages info page is equal to info. Sure. Why not? Could probably move that back up to here, just so it's a bit more cohesive. So there's no reason for us to do it in the opposite order. All right, so there's your info item, whatever. Good thing I like typing. Certainly not the fastest. I was looking on Reddit. It was someone demonstrating their like mechanical keyboard and how they made it work for them. Because I think they were missing their forearm on one of their arms. And I was like, wow, that's crazy. And apparently they get up to, was it 120 words per minute, which is about as fast as I can do it if I practice. I was like, wow, that's crazy. With just one hand and a stub. That's amazing. I suppose like we do use about the same amount of fingers, which is fair as well. Because I only use about 6 fingers to type, plus my pinkies to press shift. We won't really talk about the madness of that, but you know, it's fine. I've made it work so far, right? Tree column. Yeah, so we'll do all of this stuff. Toggle page, info page. Okay. Tree connect, whatever. We'll do the same stuff. Item selected. Is this a custom thing? What is this? Is this on tree selected? Do I have one of these, or what is this? Tree item selected. Okay, so this is one of the things on my superclass. All right. Now this is where it starts getting tough, and I'll need to start referring back to my documentation that I had the foresight of putting together before this. What things did I have? So extensions. So I have runners, puppets, and trackers. Okay, so I have trackers. So the idea is that we'll run through every single extension. Or we'll just query my extensions for all trackers and find what we need to find there. Yeah, extension types. So we'll do AM extension manager, query extensions for type, global constants, extension types, tracker. So this gives me back an array. Okay, nice. So I gotta think about it. What am I doing with this? What am I doing with this? So we, like these are all the extension resources, right? Like what did I think? Get all extensions of a certain type, return array the extension resources that match the X type. Yeah. For I and, yeah, that's fine, right? Or we'll call it extension resource, right? ER. Or ER, extension resource in AM, EM. So where my AM is the app manager, aka my singleton manager. EM is my extension manager, which is a singleton. Query extensions for type, blah, blah, blah. Okay, and that's all the params it takes? Okay. So, oh, VRMGD has some errors, that's fine. Hey. Default runner. Default runner. Runner trait. It does have a logger. Okay. Ignore that. ER for extension resource and these extensions. So this is very similar to what I'm doing here in the bones. So what's in extension resource? So we have a resource name, entry points, type, etc. So we know the type. Yeah, we know the type, so all we need to know are the resource name and the entry points. But then, how do I know if they're running? Doesn't that mean I need to store state somewhere else? Oh no. Oh no. We can try to grab the current scene, because I think I was thinking about, yeah, here we go. So we'll grab the current scene, of course. So for the default GUI, so var, this is our runner, which is equal to get tree current scene. Right. So all running trackers are managed by the current runner. Yeah. So technically the runner doesn't need to be, well, I think the runner does need to extend runner trait if you're using the, yeah, if you're using the default GUI, you do need to extend runner trait. But if you're not using the default GUI, then you can do whatever you want, as far as I'm concerned. All right, so then we have our resource name, resource entry points. Okay. Go back to bones. So var item, some sort of tree item. Create item. Hey. What am I doing? Create item roots, right? And then item dot set text tree column, not bone name. What am I doing? ER. So ER is equal to, we can do a really quick reassign, right? ER as extension resource. So I can guarantee this, and then we'll get resource name, right? I think I should only have one thing here. I guess we can just run it really quick just to make sure it works. Because as long as I don't click on any of these, yeah, there's just the one tracker. Actually, why is it called tracker? What the heck? Is that what I called the VR, or is that what I called OpenC face? Just tracker? That would be very silly of me. Config ini. You know what? I did just call it tracker, huh? Yeah. So the tracker is called OpenC face. Yeah. So we'll go back to here. That's just an ini file that kind of lives out in the void. There's OpenC face. If I click on it, we'll crash. That's good. As expected. So bones. We will create a new thing. This one creates a new bone display. We can create like a new tracking display. That's not so hard. So bone display. Oh, bone display is actually just a script. Okay. Oh, and then by the way. I think I can do a similar thing here. There we go. Just put yourself as the author. Why not? Tracking, and then we'll do a new script called tracking display, because I probably all of these need to be in their own script as well, since they do need to store their own callbacks. So tracking display, yeah, looks about right. Tracking display, tracking display, tracking display. Const. Yeah, so that's a pack scene. Here, what we'll do, tracking display. Call new on it. Yeah, that's, yeah, about as expected, for sure. What do we need to have inside of this? So that's bone display. Bone display, yeah. Tracking. Let's see. So this needs to be tracker name. It's just easier this way. So name is equal to tracker name. That's pretty easy. Visible is false. Yeah, okay. We'll just see what I was doing here with bones. So pages. ER resource name is equal to tracking display. Here, we need to do ER resource name. Add child. Okay. Yeah, I mean, that's pretty much it, right? Pretty much all you need. So go here, go into tracking. Yeah, then you can just toggle it on and off. Cool. All right. We have the runner here, which does implement runner traits. I think probably this tracker could be moved to the runner trait instead of living on the default runner. I'll think about it. I gotta use the restroom again. As mentioned previously, I am like very dehydrated for whatever reason. Yeah, so I'll be right back. I forgot to switch my scene. I apologize. Oh no, I'm leaking object instances. Why? I thought I fixed this already. Okay, one sec. Da, da, da. We go to debug, can find. Okay, debug. Give me verbose standard outs. So I'm pretty sure if I just do this, yeah, no problems. Yeah, no problems. But then if we go into default runner, then we start leaking object instances. Yeah. Okay. Oh, it's the tracking backend dummy. Ah, but why is this why is tracking backend dummy leaking? So tracking backend interface. Is it because of this? Yeah, that's the interface. Looks about right. This one, well, oh, this is a node. Wait, why is this leaking? It's a node. Default runner. Oh, I see. I see. So that's what's happening. I guess on exit. So what I'm gonna do is I'll grab this. We'll put this on the runner trait instead. This is gonna break a few things. Bear with me really quick. So there is your tracker. Then here, we'll have physics process ready, blah blah. This is exit tree. We'll do the same thing, don't override this. Right, so this is like tear down. So the very basics of tearing down stuff, right? So this tracker, we should queue free the tracker if possible. Yeah, so we'll do tracker queue free and then tear down blah blah in exit tree. Here we go. Okay, so that should just work. We'll go back to default runner. Tracker is not declared in the current scope. Now it is. We'll go back to here. We're still in verbose standard out. Yeah, there we go. No orphans. No orphans. Because we have killed them all. You ever wondered about like how kind of grim a lot of programming terminology is? So like you kill child processes, you can kill orphan processes, kill orphan objects. You can abort a child process as well. Abort is basically the same as killing it. Although I suppose abort, at least in English, if you're aborting a process, means that you are bailing out of it, right? Presumably because something went wrong. Whereas if you kill a process, means that you are finished with it and you no longer want it. Which is, if you're using the shorthand for everything, you are either killing the child or aborting the child. Oh no, it's politics. Fun times. Let me see. I think this is good. We don't need to look at this anymore. Most of these are all right. Like the logs, also pretty good. Say goodbye. Default runner. Please, sir. I've updated you already. Runner trait. Go back to here, go back to here. All right, restart VS Code. I think if I was doing like C# in Godot, I would use JetBrains Writer instead. Maybe one of these days. One of these days, I will. Luckily, it's pretty easy to start converting your entire code base to C#, so whatever. The only problem is that I do need to compile my own builds, and compiling C# builds is a huge pain. Is run on Alright. So track and display. What kind of information would you even want to be displayed by the tracker? So you go here, right, tracking, current running trackers, and then what do I have right now? So we have, I guess this is like very specific to, this is very specific to what I'm thinking. What things would you want? You would want, or at least how would you define this data? Maybe if I parsed all these INI files as like tomls, that might be a bit easier. Oh no, he's thinking about it. Because I am going to be shipping my custom toml implementation, or like if you want to develop for this, you must use my custom engine. No, I shouldn't do that. But then how do I? I'm thinking. Don't close this. Because I need to be able to define certain values not via code, or maybe I can, right? Because the reason why I'm very confused about this is because of this. Like, this is how these are all these things are defined like so. So I don't have enough information. Right, so like, how do I tell it's like, okay, you know, this is the camera select, you know, OpenCFace requires camera select, OpenCFace requires FPS. OpenCFace can also optionally launch the tracker. How do I get that information from here? Because this is just an INI file, and I'm trying to avoid using any like super custom stuff. So if you want to export, you need to use my custom build. But if you just want to develop, then the base Godot, whatever you can download from the official Godot website should be good enough, right? Because in debug mode, you can load in 3D models that are not currently imported by Godot, right? In debug mode, you can do that. In exports, you have to use my custom template because Godot actually takes that out at runtime for whatever reason. Or it takes that out in exported builds, which is very inconvenient. And there's no option to force it back in by default. Even though it's really easy to implement. I don't know why they've done that. So I put it back in. Let me see. I can have like a custom key. Yeah, I can have a custom key that's like, so extension resource has an other field. And so in global constants, extension other keys, add GUI as defaults. I feel like I need to have like explanations for these. Otherwise, I'm never going to remember what these map back to. So Selectable Gui is really talking about, no, that's not real-time lip sync. This is this one. Yeah. So this defines whether to show this as a selectable GUI when starting a runner. And then this one is whether to show this as a pop-up in the default GUI. Yeah, okay. So this defaults to false. And this defaults to true, question mark, maybe? I need to check that actually. Is this true? Always a good sign. I'm pretty sure this defaults to false. Yeah, so this defaults to false. And then in default GUI, when I'm looking through all of the stuff, oh, this also defaults to false. Okay, so defaults to false. Yeah, that makes sense. That lines up with how I try to handle a bunch of stuff, right? So by default, I try to assume any optional thing is a defaults to false, right? Anything that's a plugin, you want to always assume that you don't want to make it available globally. Yeah. Basically, you never want to auto-execute anything. Yeah. Now we have another thing. So OpenC face. Maybe we can have like a maybe there should be like a descriptor file or like a config. It's like an additional config for your config. Or maybe it's like a data file. Maybe a descriptor, description, config. I feel like calling it config inside of your config ini would be very confusing. Maybe it should be called data. Huh, properties. Data. Properties. Data. Where data is like a struct. And then because it's so easy to load in, it's fine, right? You know what? Data. So this will be basically an optional key, right? So it might not always exist. Yeah, so there is your thing. Data, so this is arbitrary data, essentially. So arbitrary data associated with the extension resource. Yeah, okay. I think that makes sense, right? So here, the reason why I'm doing all of this is because here, right? We click on this, how do I know? Because this is for all types of trackers, right? So there's multiple types of trackers. Someone's already worked on a iFacial mocap tracker. It's basically just waiting on me now. I've worked on OpenC Face. The parameters needed for both of those are very different. So I need to figure out, like how do I define which things should be populated into the GUI, right? When it was just working with, you know, only OpenCFace, it's easy because, you know, there's only one set of options, and then maybe like a few optional things based on your OS. So on Linux, you know, there's an option for defining your Python path, right? Because you might not always, or one of the required dependencies on X runtime depends on Python 3.9, because it's not yet updated to run with Python 3.10 for whatever reason. I thought Python 3.9 and 3.10 were more or less backwards compatible, but maybe not. Like I know 3.10 has added switch statements. Switch statements, pretty sick. You know, future. The future is now in Python. Or actually, no, Python doesn't have switch statements, right? They're called match statements, similar to how Godot has them. Yeah, I need some way to define what needs to be shown here, which is why I am adding a data field. So this is the Gui descriptor, data, arbitrary data associated with the extension resource. The intent here is that if it's a GD file, there's a few assumptions that we can make. Otherwise, it'll just need to be parsed, I suppose. Yeah, it'll just need to be custom parsed otherwise. Yeah, so arbitrary data associated with the extension resource should be, or must be, a relative path. Yeah, so you can have this, and then we can even make this fancy, right? So resource, or we can have this in data, OpenCFace Gui descriptor, right? And then if we go into OpenCFace, new folder, data, then this is the, we'll call it the Gui descriptor, right? Or tracking Gui descriptor. Yeah. So as an example, I think this is pretty good. So tracking Gui. We're going basically full enterprise here. No, I pressed escape instead of enter. Tracking Gui descriptor, GD. There is your GD file. We'll register it with Godot really quickly. Extends reference. So this is basically just arbitrary GD scripts, but you know, JSON is also valid. XML, I'm not going to support. CSV could be implemented, I suppose, but it's really just going to be, I think in release builds, TOML will be supported as well, but I guess it's okay. Tracking Gui descriptor. And we'll have get data. I don't really know how to, how would you define an entry point for this? How would you define an entry point for data? Or is it really just like reading every single property? So I would basically treat this as, I would basically treat it as, as a JSON file, right? It's just a fancy JSON file that's parsed as a GD script. I gotta think about that. So how would I define this UI here, like this very small subset of UI, inside a arbitrary piece of GD script that may or may not have any functions inside of it? Like, even if it did have functions inside of it, how would you even define what to call? I guess I can do something like this, right? So we'll, I continue to make this more and more complicated. Must be a relative path. Can optionally define an entry point func if the data is a GD script file delimited by a colon, e.g. mydata.gd my entry point. Yeah, okay, that makes sense to me. But this doesn't need an entry point. Maybe, although you totally could, right? So for this config ini, you know what? Yeah, I mean, I think it does make sense to have an entry point because I do hide some elements based off of whether or not we are running on Linux. So this is even observable, right, on my master branch. So we go into GUI, drag this over so you can actually see what I'm talking about. So in tracking, this is actually observable here as well. So Python path, if OS name, blah, blah, is Windows, and we actually hide that element. So I can emulate the same thing here by doing like that, right? Because you can never have a colon in the name, so it's fine. Yeah, and this is something that is loaded at runtime, so it doesn't matter whether or not it has, you know, static typing attached to it or not. Because even in Godot 4, I don't think we get to benefit from static typing if we load something at runtime, although I haven't tried it. So run. Although I guess it is good for my own sanity, right? Ha ha ha. So then... How would you even define something like this? We can do... Like, this is very specific to tracking display or tracking, right? So we have the extension resource, and then we look for the tracking data descriptor. So there's our extension resource, right? And so our extension resource will always have an other thing. So if extension resource other, so it's if not has global constants extension other keys data, then we'll just continue. And then we'll do logger. It's not really an error, but well, it is an error. So logger error extension missing data. descriptor. So this is ER resource name. So we always have a resource name, so that's fine. So if it's missing a data descriptor, then we'll just skip it. Because otherwise we don't know how to display it. But if you write your own runner, maybe you can just figure it out. Specific returns data for the default GUI. Yeah. Default GUI. Tailored for the default GUI. Okay. So I think we can just do this all in one go, right? So return visible is equal to OS get name to lower is equal to, what is it called? X11? So if it should be visible, oh no, hold on. Okay, hold on. So there's only some things that are visible. Okay, so we do want to make sure. I'm basically coming up with my own like DSL, right? Domain specific language inside of Godot as well, which is starting to get kind of scary. So R. How would you describe this via code, via just a dictionary? And then we're also running a little additional logic as well when the script is hot loaded or runtime loaded into it. We can do Python path. I think that's what I do here. You can't see it, but now you can. So Python path, Python path, Python path, Python path. So visible is equal to OS get name does not equal Windows, and I will just hit it with a 2 lower just in case. And then I suppose we'll have to have a descriptor associated with it as well. Or perhaps we can just pass along all the data, right? So something we can do here is like the node, right? Yeah. Yeah, I could do something like that. It's a very strange. It's very strange, especially since this is something that should be probably packaged into its own object. But, right? It's because like some of these are fairly complicated. Like this one is fairly complicated. Camera select. You know, this start stop tracker probably does not need to be provided by the user. That can just be assumed. Okay, so I'm trying to think in terms of like Python path, which is conditionally shown based off of which OS is currently being used, or which OS is currently, you know, running the stuff. Something like that. And then camera select, which is based off of which hardware cameras you currently have access to, which on Windows is very easy to run, but on Linux is somewhat more complicated, right? Because that requires me to run a shell script, which I may or may not have access to. You know what? What we'll do, I'm thinking. Or maybe like these properties can be set on the meta. Yeah, maybe I can set these on the meta dictionary as well, and that might also work. Possibly. I'm thinking about it. There's so many options. I wish somebody would tell me what to do. I'm lost. There's too many like high level. Like this is basically at the point. Like this is a pivotal moment. Do I go ahead with this? Like, do I do it like this and then basically cement the API for a long time? Or do we do it like this, where we do like, this is our Python path node, right? And so instead of doing it like so, where you define a dictionary with a bunch of variables on it, we instead just pass along this node. So we construct it here and then pass it along here. I think we do it like that, and then we just have to pass along like a meta dictionary along with it. Yeah. I think it makes sense to do that. Box container. Yeah, so we can do it like this, right? So Python path. Something like that. Yeah, I think this is workable, I think. Right? So there's your Python path. Oh, but then undo me. Here, we only ever want to add it to our return values if we're on Linux. So if os get name to lower, I know I've done this a few times, so I'm thinking about it, is equal to, is it x11? Is that what I do here? Or what are the possible names you can have for this? Because I don't natively develop on Linux, although maybe in the future I will if I'm ever forced to upgrade to Windows 11. I hope I don't. Get name. What are the names? So it's x11, and we'll, okay, we to lower it, so that's fine. So then R Python path. And then we'll have to capitalize it later. Yeah, that's fine. Python path. So that generates a Python path node. So here, yeah, you know what? I think this makes sense. I think this makes a lot of sense, right? I think this makes a lot of sense. So every single key will be an element, right? Every single key will be an element, and then we don't even need to do any additional logic stuff. Like if we do need to pass data along, those should probably be set on the meta variable, right? Because I don't think you can set meta. Yeah, there's no set meta on the dictionary. There should be like a reserved word. So like probably like underscore underscore data underscore underscore. So very Python style. So Python path, that needs to be, so var, this is some sort of label, probably would not have guessed that. And then there should also be a var line edit, which is a line edit. Wow. So then R add child line edit, and then this one should be R add child. Well, we'll add child at the very end, right? So add. So label and then line edit to both of these. So label. We can even have a little helper function inside of here as well, which is, you know, to kind of wiggle these out to be fill expand on the horizontal axis. H fill expand. So given some sort of control, we'll do it like that. Basically takes a pointer. So any control that comes through here, we'll do size flags horizontal will be equal to control size expand fill. Yeah, that's not so bad. Yeah. So H fill expands R. We'll do all the same stuff here. H fill expand label. And finally, H fill expand line edit. Yeah, okay. Then here, label text. This is all defined at runtime, or at load time, which is runtime, by the way. This will be, how do I have this defined? This is just called a Python path, isn't it? So in tracking XML, unfortunately, I'm not running on Python or on Linux. I'm not sure. Use lip sync Python path. Okay, it's just called Python path. Cool. Python path. But how am I naming elements here? I don't remember. Are they title cased or just regular cased? Okay, they're just regular cased. Cool. So there's your Python path. Line edit. This one, I need to remember. I thought this one was somewhat special. Doesn't this one have a default value associated with it? Oh yeah, it pulls its default value from the config. So in the current version of whatever the heck I'm using right now. Python path. Okay, so it's star. Yeah. So line edits. It's one of the text things. Yeah, placeholder text is equal to path to Python binary, something like that. So this will only ever show up on Linux because I don't bundle anything with Linux. Well, I do bundle the face tracker, but it's just a bunch of Python files. Whereas on Windows, there's like a Python to exe or whatever, which bundles everything together. I think the hard part about Linux is that it's somewhat difficult to just bundle a binary. Sometimes it just does not work on certain distributions. Whereas Windows, Windows is Windows, right? Windows, one of the good parts about Windows is that everything is more or less guaranteed to be backwards compatible. For better or worse, like bugs and all, it'll just keep working. All right, so tracking Gui Descriptor, and then we'll just add all of these in order, question mark. Yeah, I think dictionaries in Godot are ordered. So if I go back to tracking, so add child tracking display. How do I do this in bone display? Or not bone display, bones. Add child. Okay, so I can start adding a bunch of garbage to it if I want. So so tracking display requires, so okay, we'll have like data, which is a dictionary, which is default to an empty dictionary. I suppose it doesn't matter, right? So we can do it like this, just in case it doesn't exist. So we'll do. Oh no, yeah, we can guarantee that it exists. ER other. Global constants, extensions, other keys, data. Yeah, that's not so bad. That's not so bad. Then here in tracking display, now we have data. So for key in data keys, so these should all be nodes, at least for the default implementation. But of course we can also just check the value as well. So var val is equal to data key, and then we can just hit it with a match, right? So match type of value. So if it is type node or type what am I looking for? Is it type objects? Type objects. Type objects? Yeah, I think it's type object. Yeah, so if it's of type objects, if val is no, so you do have to be careful because you can't just add child on everything you see. So if not, then that should be an error. We should explode immediately. So am logger. I feel like I should also pass along the logger as well, which is something I should also do with bones. Yeah, because everyone can share the same logger, that's fine. Yeah, so we'll pass along the logger, that's fine. There's your logger. We'll pass along the logger here. So I can guarantee that these have a logger. Then in tracking, we'll pass along our logger here. That's fine. And then there's your logger. So logger is equal to p logger. This one. There's your logger. Okay. Not so bad. Not so bad. I think the logger is instantiated immediately, maybe? Maybe not. When do I set up the logger? That might not be entirely true for everything. Does this have a logger? It does not. Okay. So base pop-up tree. We can have like a setup and like a setup logger as well, since that one is not super duper dependent on whatever. How do I do it in config manager? So setup logger. Okay, so there's like a setup and then like a setup logger. So I think I just need to have oh, this is just some sort of pop-up, right? It's hard to say what exactly it'll be. What do I do for logger? Yeah, okay. So this should be like logger error using default logger for get script resource name. Okay, cool, cool, cool. Bones, we'll just override that. So big config change like this are kind of a pain, but that's fine. Logger is equal to logger new. It's not really a huge problem to just use the default logger. But actually, how do I just change? Yeah, I suppose parent name. That's fine. Default pop-up logger. So that's okay, but we won't call it here. So bones, that's fine. Model, we'll need to do the same thing. There's ready, we don't really have a ready. That's fine. Model. I think I don't need to call ready. That should just be called for me. Set up logger. So this is model. This is the model logger, yeah. Here, tracking. All right, just to make sure that everything still works, you never know. Sometimes it lies to you. Okay, cool. Yeah, there we go. Yeah. Beautiful. And so if I did not have that defined, what would happen? Run me. Default. It's still using the... What's going on? I don't ever set up the logger here. This is using base pop a tree layouts. When is the logger set up? There's setup logger. Hey. Sometimes changes don't always propagate. Yeah, actually, what the heck? When does this logger get set up? Because I don't think I'm doing anything especially special here. Or is this set by the default GUI? That's also possible. Base pop-up. Oh, they inherit from the base pop-up, don't they? Oh, they do. And then the logger is set on them. Oh, yeah. Okay, I see. That's my error. Okay, let's just get out of here. Don't do this anymore. Why would you do this? Only a huge dummy would want to do this. I remember. So I do need to add a note to myself. So note to self. This logger is set by the base pop-up. By yeah, so set by base pop-up. Base pop-up just kind of blindly, it does a blind set on whatever is inside of it, which is good and bad. Yeah, okay, that'll work. It's good enough. I understand what I was going for there. Although I think what I could do here, base pop up, how do I determine? Oh, it's just like the screen that's associated with it. Yeah. I guess that'll work. But there's no way to know. Yeah, there's no way to pass any data to it either. Okay, that's fine. That's fine. Okay, so here, tracking display. If it is not node, I mean, we can always pass a logger to here. We can, once we're at this level, right? So once we're inside the pop-up level, which is to say, once we're, you know, inside here. Oh no. Invalid type in function new in GDScript cannot convert argument 2 from string to dictionary. ER other. Okay. I guess we should probably try to load the GDScript file here. Okay. So I gotta think. What does load return? I've never checked. So it loads a resource. Resource is loaded on method call unless it's referenced already elsewhere, another script in the scene, which might cause slight delay, especially when loading scenes. Store the resource in a variable, use preload, blah blah. Path must be absolute. A local path would just return null. Method is a simplified version of resource loader load, which can be used for more advanced scenarios. So resource loader load, blah blah. Caching the result for further access. Queried sequentially to find the first one, which can handle the file's extension and then attempt loading. This is an unnecessary comma. If loading fails, the remaining resource format loaders are also attempted. Type hint, blah blah. No cache is true. The resource cache will be bypassed and the resource will load anew. Otherwise, the cache resource will be returned if it exists. Returns an empty resource if no resource format loader could handle the file. Okay. Okay, yeah, okay. So we can do var resource data. So this must be some sort of resource, of course. So we'll just hit it with a basic load, right? So ER resource other extension other keys data. So if resource data is null, logger error. Unable to load. Descriptor for blah blah. Skipping. Yeah, it's not so bad. And then we just need to check. Well, no, we don't need to check it. We can just load it directly. Yeah, just like this. So resource data. So we do a few checks. That's fine. Yeah, I think that makes sense. Yeah. I think that makes sense. So run me one more time. Tracking, okay. So invalid get index resource on base. Oh, right. It's not resource, it's ER extension resource other, which is anything that is, you know, the other stuff. Okay, so now we've run into an error, that's good. File not found. Oh, right, because it needs to be loaded from the context. Oh, good. Okay. So this is the var data path, some sort of string. So this will be equal to am, he. It's one of these. Load resource. Yeah, load resource, ER, it's not the extension resource. Maybe it is the resource. Do I have access to the... I don't think this is correct, but this might be correct. from an extension's context. So the extension name. Do I have the extension name on the extension resource? I could always add that. I'm pretty sure this is wrong though. Probably. All right, what is your problem? Some sort of result. So if data path results is error, logger error, I guess we'll just do data path result string, right? So if either of these, yeah, else unable to load data for ba, ER resource name. Yeah, that's not so bad. Could be a lot worse. Yeah. Not so bad. Not so bad. And then this is the result. We don't want to do this stuff because we do need to load it in a very, very specific fashion. Yeah, so we'll just unwrap it here. I'm pretty sure this is still wrong though, because this is not the extension name. This is just the extension resource. Yeah, okay. So it says extension context resource not found. Yeah. So in the extension manager and extension resource as well. So this should, we need to have basically a link back to the containing extension. Yeah. For extension name. That's not hard. Extension name. So here we'll do it based off of the extension name. Right? And then extension manager. Whenever we are parsing it, parse extension section. This is our extension resource. Add a resource. All right, so extension, blah, blah. So add resource, extension resource. That feels pretty good. This one, it's really easy. We'll just pass in the extension's own name, just so it's easy to query later. Yeah, there we go. So get rid of this, get rid of that, get rid of this. That should just work. Then here, yeah, it's not so bad, probably. As long as I saved everything, I have a tendency not to do that. Default runner tracking. What happened? So extension resource not found. Oh, I see. So here, I do need to make sure to do this. So this is the relative path, or I guess this is the entry points, right? Which is some sort of string. So ER other. I hate having to type this out, so we'll just copy and paste it really quick. right? Split entry points, which is a pool string. Array is entry points split on colons. And so then we'll always take the first index. That's pretty easy. Split entry points 0. And then otherwise, Or maybe that like the entry point should just be passed to the tracking display instead, and then I'll let the tracking display figure out what exactly it wants to do, and then it can also display an error message just in case it's not valid. Yeah, I think that makes sense, as opposed to trying to have all the data here, and then, you know, the error will be invisible to the user once they eventually encounter it. Yeah, I think that makes more sense. So we'll load it in the tracking display instead. Yeah. Sometimes I want to go to America, Detroit for a new life. Why do you want to go to Detroit? One of the least glamorous cities in the US. Like, Detroit's a lot nicer now, at least in the last like 10 years, but for a little while it used to be not so great. Used to be not so great. Let me think. It's us versus them. It's Detroit versus everyone. Oh. Hello, Gareth. No, I suppose I shouldn't talk poorly about Detroit since I've never been. But it does have a reputation as being kind of a hellhole in the US. Of course, it's not like that, you know, in every part of the city, but that's every city, right? Every city has its good parts, every city has its bad parts. No, nothing about Detroit. I know from Eminem. Yeah, Eminem's from Detroit, right? Yeah. No, I think if you wanted to go to a pretty decent city in the US, I'm trying to think of one. What's a pretty good city? I think Denver, Colorado. That's pretty good. Also, weed is legal there, so I mean, if you're into that. New York, I would probably stay away from. Although, like, New York is also the biggest city in the US, so not so bad. San Francisco, absolutely not. Maybe like a Portland. Portland is pretty good. Seattle, I heard, is pretty good as well. Maybe not Portland. I heard the cops there. If you are not a, you know, Caucasian male, you might have a bad time in Portland. But I hear Seattle's not so bad. San Diego, no. Pretty much like anywhere in California is like, eh. I suppose like you don't really hear too many horrible things about San Diego other than like it's hot. I heard Philadelphia's not so bad, you know? As long as you stay away from the south side, I think. Or is it west side? I don't remember. I guess we'll just make this a dictionary and handle everything here. No, but then we do. It's because we need to load it and then potentially run the. Well, no. The amount of logic here should be very minimal. I don't know what I'm doing here. Want to live longer? Denver is a challenge. What do you mean? Denver, like the air should technically be cleaner. Colorado is a, for the most part, a pretty liberal US state. I'd say it's one of the better places to live for sure. Yeah. I think if you want to get shot, you should go to Chicago, Detroit, Atlanta. I live in Atlanta, by the way. Where else are you likely to get shot? Probably New York as well, if depending on the neighborhood you're in, or as they call it, a borough. Are neighborhoods in New York City called boroughs? New York City borough. Yeah. Boroughs in New York City are, or neighborhoods in New York are called boroughs. You don't really hear too much about Staten Island, though. We're a nice place in like Alabama, yeah. Yeah, with your sister, your aunt, your uncle, where your sister and your aunt, who are the same person. I've been to Alabama. Alabama's not so bad. It has a bad reputation for being full of hillbillies, which is, you know, not necessarily untrue. I don't know. I've been to Alabama a few times. It's not so bad. I think as long as you look like a Caucasian male, you should be fine. So, blah, blah. We don't want to do this. This should be, we need to process the data somehow. So, we can have like a process, or what am I doing? Handle data, handle descriptor. So this will be some sort of file that was potentially parsed. Or no, yeah, handle descriptor. So this will be some sort of path, and we'll load it in directly from here. Right, and this will have to give me back a dictionary. Right, yeah, I think that makes the most sense. Many swamps to hide the vegetables. In Alabama? No, that's false. I think there are swamps in Alabama if you're near the coast. But that's... Most people in Alabama don't live near the coast, I feel like. Oh, I guess there's Mobile. Mobile is near the coast. Birmingham. It's not near the coast. I am from Atlanta, as mentioned previously, which is the biggest city in the Southeast, not including Florida. Florida is pretty big. Like, I get shot the first guy I was in the US anywhere? Really? I don't know. I mean, Atlanta, as long as you stay out of the south side, potentially also west side, potentially also east side. As long as you're in North Atlanta, you should be fine. England? Oh, you're not talking to me. Sorry. I'm immune to stabbing. Well, that's okay. If you think about it, isn't like getting shot just like a ranged stabbing? You just got stabbed by a bullet. By someone in a car driving by at 65 miles an hour or possibly faster. I'm looking at this and I'm thinking this doesn't look right. So get context. I guess I can do get context and then I can load it from there. Yeah, I guess I can load it from there. So load resource, what does this do? Hey. This is some sort of context, yeah? Get context. Context, sure. This gives me this, load a resource, and then it just raw loads it, but that's not always going to work. Yeah, I need to be careful about how I handle this. So I think this is one of the few exceptions where I need to get the context explicitly. So this is context extension context. One of these. So this is the entry point. So this will path and funk. Argentina. They stab us many times like sponges. I know the lead developer of Godot, Juan something, recently moved to Spain. Valencia, Spain. Not to dox him. I mean, he has posted that on Twitter, so I'm not doxing him. All right, so comment all of this out. So we can do like a handle descriptor here. So this is basically like data, right? So this is some sort of dictionary. And actually, we can return a result as well. So this is some sort of result. Return results, okay, and then wrap it in that. So this is result. Result is equal to handle descriptor. So we have our extension context. Give me a second, because we do need to find the extension context as well. Var context, extension context is equal to am manager, em extension manager, get context for er extension name. And actually, that's not true. This is a result. If context result is error, so logger error. Logger error, context result to unwrap error to string. If context result else. That guy should be national pride thanks to the use of Godot. Yeah, probably. I mean, what else is Argentina known for, really? I suppose I shouldn't say that. They do have don't they? Argentina has a polar research base on Antarctica, right? I think they're also known for losing to the UK in the Falklands War. I think doesn't Argentina have an aircraft carrier? They're one of the few nations that have an aircraft carrier. That's pretty notable. Because actually, like, having an aircraft carrier, not that common. Like, doesn't the UK only have, like, 2 aircraft carriers? Or England, that is country Gareth? Yes. I do know. Yeah, how many aircraft carriers do they have? Argentina aircraft carrier. They have 1, right? Aircraft carriers are the Argentine Navy. Yeah, there's just 1. But then the UK aircraft carriers in service. Yeah, but how many in service? I forget. In service, it's like 2, right? Yeah, 2 carriers. Yeah, I know things sometimes. I don't know why I know that. I don't know why I knew that Argentina had 1 aircraft carrier and the UK had 2. I actually don't know how many aircraft carriers does the US have? US active aircraft carriers? Is it 9? Please be 9. It's 11? They have 11? That's crazy. That's amazing, dude. The US has 11 active aircraft carriers? Why? And they're all Nimitz class. So they're all nuclear. Just imagine. I thought US only had 9. They have 11? Unable to get extension context for ER resource name. Considering they spend so much on their military, I'm not surprised it's 11. Yeah, well, I mean, the US also has a ton of nuclear submarines though, so I don't know. Somehow I just assumed that they traded out aircraft carriers for submarines. I'm gonna win anyways. Once Imperial Japan with only 30,000 soldiers defeated. England. Yeah, wasn't that that was the Singapore, or the Malaysia campaign? So the UK detachment in Singapore lost to a vastly inferior Japanese force, isn't that it? Or is that Burma? my World War II history knowledge is, it's been a few years since I've seen that documentary. That lesson, yeah, look at that. I know things. Let's go. I know things. Just completely off the cuff, just knew that. No, the Wehrmacht? What's here? Wehrmacht? What? Are you talking about the Wehrmacht? The German army at the time? Pre-war Japanese were madmen. I think the pre-war Japanese were just or it's more like their neighbors were incompetent, right? Like the China at the time was, you know, completely useless as expected. You know, crippled by the 2 opium wars, courtesy of the United Kingdom, or was it Britain at the time? Don't remember. So we have our context, we have all of this stuff, we handled the descriptor, so we have their context res, unwrap, and then entry points, which is a string, and so then we'll need to unwrap this. So this is the descriptor. We're lucky that all the Japanese were in China, killing the entire population that invaded Russia or the rest of Asia. Japan had a lot of trouble in the was it the Russo-Japanese War, right? So I think it was pretty unlikely that they would have taken too much Russian territory at the time. So wasn't it like the Russian Navy tried to sail over to provide support, but in the end it was really just army versus army. And then even then, because of Japanese doctrine at the time, they didn't really make use of tanks, and instead just made use of massed infantry charges, which is more reminiscent of World War I, which is ineffective against the Russians at the time. I feel like I remember that. Alright, so we do descriptor, unwrap, and then we'll do the same thing here. So if not descriptor res or descriptor res or result is error. The mentality to make a brilliant army, like some crazy pride. Suicidal? Yeah, well, it's because of the usual mentality of a lot of Asian people. Which is, you know, it sounds racist, but I'm also like, I'm also Asian, but I guess I'm not like, I didn't grow up in Asia, but I do interact with a lot of Asian people. Very commonly get mixed up for Korean. I'm not Korean though. descriptor res else. They're being irradiated by bombs, so they start making anime instead of yeah. One of the many benefits of nuking the Japanese, for sure. I think, you know, controversial takes only on this channel. I think the nukes were a good decision. Because at some point, you know, someone is going to have to die. So, They're just a cute little island with no natural resources. This is also true. Their only natural resource is anime and earthquakes. Where the earthquakes are, you know, classic God's wrath for the creation of anime, but it's a sacrifice worth making. Because who doesn't like a little devil's paintings in their lives? You know what I'm saying? Unable to process descriptor for blah blah. So ER resource name. This is very cumbersome. Don't worry, I'm right here, sharing in your pain. Hentai industry is 1% of Japan's GDP. Is it really? I'd believe it. I believe it. Considering how much of Japan's GDP is anime? Japan GDP anime. Japan GDP anime. Depending on what Japan's GDP based on anime is. Anime's contribution to Japan's economy. Eco-educate. What do you got? Percent. So it's a rise of 4.21%. It's 10% of the overall production value of the publishing industry. But what is that's the animation market sales. I don't know. I don't see anything. I don't know. What percentage of GDP does anime contribute to Japan? I don't know. Hard to say. 1% is massive. Yeah, that's what I'm saying. It's like, depending on what anime's contribution is, there's no way it's that big, right? Because it doesn't what is it? It's not Honda. It's the other one. Isn't like Japan is known for like military armaments, right? Like they make a lot of military missiles, don't they? Or they make missile components, which is defense industry, huge market for sure, courtesy of the US. With the military industrial complex. To defeat the Ukraine, a minimum of 100 million men were needed in the Battle of Kiev, 1941. I don't know. Yeah, I don't know. 1% being just hentai, hard to say. Now, if you're saying that like Japan's like art industry is 1% of its GDP, maybe. You know, I suppose that's quite a stretch, because then you need to consider like, is hentai art? Maybe. I don't know. I don't think I'm cultured enough to make that kind of judgment. It's possible. You know. I think if we're being honest, have I watched hentai before? Yes. Do I do it on the regular? No. I think if I had a choice, I think I'd rather just watch regular pornography. Haven't really needed to do that though. I think that not to brag or anything, but handle descriptor. So we have our descriptor, and then we have our extension context. So then we can do, well, we can check out the path and function. Imagine 1% that profit is spent to 1% of GDP on military spending. What does the US spend on military spending? I don't remember. Is it 10%? US GDP military spending. I don't remember. Oh no, it's US only spends 3.5% in 2021. That's not so bad. Do I need a hentai report now that you're a top streamer? Yeah. Now I can just look at my own VODs and look at my model. Now I think that's an interesting question. Has any, I guess, like catfish streamer who is, like a dude that uses a female anime model, has any one of those people, done the deed to their own model? I've never really thought about that, but I guess it's plausible. I guess it's plausible. I've never thought about it. Right? So max split 1. So var path split 0, and then we have var, what did I call this? Global constants entry points. If split size is greater than 1, then we'll do entry points. Wait, no, we can just do it all in one step. What am I doing? It's equal to split 1 if split size is greater than 1, else empty string. Yeah, that's easy. Does it not surprise me that they're close to defaulting on your debt, like Argentina? Yeah. Who's close to defaulting on debt? I don't think the US is very close to defaulting on anything. I suppose the national debt has gone up, but when hasn't it? Especially in the recent times that we're in. Some of these VTuber characters are so borderline hentai. Yeah. I mean, even this character is like borderline hentai, right? Like you can, I think I've done this on stream before where you just like, whoop, just do that really quickly. I was like, oh, okay. Well, I'm glad that that part is also textured. Very cool. Very cool. Like, why would you, I guess it makes sense to texture it, but just put some pants on, man. Like, what are you doing? You're making everyone uncomfortable. I guess some people are into that. A book where the plot of the United States does not pay its debt and defaults, basically the world burns. Yeah, well, it's the same thing, right? Like, so, the People's Republic of China doesn't pay its debts either, or if they just shut off, exports or stuff, I think the world would be also in dire straits. So, okay, so now we need to handle if path. All right, I guess we need to match the extension, right? So match path, get extension to lower. So there's either GD, that's easy, right? GD is pretty easy. This one, potentially XML. Well, I'm not gonna handle XML, that's fine. JSON. So, but XML, we don't want to handle because I don't want to have to worry about parsing that stuff. It's very complicated. No INI files either. I hate the AUS. Well, that's unfortunate considering it's the militarily the strongest power in the world. That also like totally lost in Afghanistan, but we just don't mention that most of the time. Error code error. This is like the tracking stuff. Not the viewer. Anything moderately perverse will lure in a ton of people on Twitch? Yeah. For sure. Maybe if I was more of like a gaming streamer, possibly. Well, actually, this is basically a runner, right? So we can reuse this error code. Amaranth, why did you say that? What did Amaranth say? I know that she's like she's the highest earning female streamer. But also I think in the top 5, right? Like 2 of them were VTubers. Which is also like very cool. Actually, I think anything else. So I only ever want to handle JSON, possibly TOML. I'll think about TOML. But anything else should just be unhandled. So just return an error. Just looked it up, but Japan's debt is 257% of its GDP. Yeah, I mean, that's called leverage. Son, look it up. So you gotta take on debt to make money, something like that. Because you're always take the profit now and then just kind of push it off for someone else to deal with in the future. Afghanistan in the Congo, Afghanistan in the Congo was 18,000 kilometers from the US. What's Afghanistan in the Congo? Zets are with the National Bank. Which national bank? Amaranth is softcore porn. Yeah, Amaranth is softcore porn. It's like Amaranth is pornography for people in countries that don't allow for like Pornhub, which I understand, you know. RIP UK. Didn't most ISPs in the UK, don't they like, you have to be above the age of 18 now in order to access any pornography website? I feel like I've heard of that before. So this is var GD script is equal to load this thing, so this is context path. Doesn't mind the context path extension context. Yeah, no, I can load a resource from there using the raw context. Okay, so context load resource, and then this requires a path, I think. Yeah, so just the path. Okay, and then this returns a results, right? Something like that. Telegram pirate groups, no idea. I'm not gonna pay $50 for a dump service. I don't even have $50 anyways. Fair enough. Was it there's a way though? Is it hard for a kid to find porn? Yeah. You know, or you make do. I know that there are video games out there that are rated T that do have more or less topless ladies in them. You know, no nipples, but you know. When has that ever stopped a young lad? Where, you know, spanking the monkey, etc., etc. So if result is error. So if not result or res is error, return res else result error. Runner load file failed. Path. Okay, cool. So could I used to go to the shops and buy the magazines? Magazines. Magazines. Physical media? How old are you? Grandpa? How is a nursing home? I think I've only ever held like a Playboy magazine in my hand once. Otherwise, I don't think I've ever known anybody who had a Playboy magazine. I read them for their articles. File. Yeah, file open. So this is context, context path, and then just the regular path. Is not okay. Result, error, code, runner, load file failed. Beautiful. I'm 32. Oh man. You're like 32? How old am I? You're roughly 5 years older than me? Roughly? That's crazy. Pakistani asked for TV magazines. 19, I used to also use those things when they had a speed of 5 kilobits. Nah, what you gotta do is you just gotta download the video, man. You just download the video, save them in a folder called like random documents. So who's gonna look in a folder called random documents, right? Friend had a stash of VHS porn in his back garden. Essays, yeah, essays. You know, other documents. There's all kinds of stuff. I'm familiar. I still grew up in the age of just horrible internet speeds. Okay, so we have all the stuff here. If we only ever need to use the entry points if we have a GD file. JSON and TOML are not able to be executed. Yeah. It's not so bad. It's not so bad. No, and I'm also overtime. I have been telling myself I really need to stop going super overtime. All right. Because I have things to do. I'm an adult. Or at least I like to tell myself that. Pakistani shop. And all the objects I sold were the bomb. Yeah. They were, at least in Gareth's case, they might have caused some minor explosions. All right. Yeah. Thanks for tuning in. I'll be live tomorrow. What is today? Today is Tuesday. Oh my god, today felt like a Thursday, man. I'll be live tomorrow from 9 to 11 p.m. Eastern time working on this again. I'm trying to knock it out so I can go back to working on games since I'm just very slowly losing my mind working on this thing. Excuse me, sir. Dude, we had a Taliban group near my house when I was a kid? That's crazy, dude. That's crazy. I don't think I ever had any extremist groups near my house, but that's because I grew up in North Atlanta. One of the few area codes that people in the Southeast actually just kind of recognize for whatever reason. But yeah, let me see. What's my usual spiel? Oh yeah, you know, if you like what you see, or if you're interested in whatever the heck I'm working on, I was working on the rewrites of this thing, where this thing refers to this thing. Look at that. So we have models, blah, blah, blah. So it's pretty much equivalent to this, except supposedly better and also hopefully a bit faster. But mostly it's just a lot more extensible, yada, yada. Yeah, I'm working hard on that. You can find that code on my GitHub. You know what? Looks like my bot crashed. Would not be surprised. This happens sometimes. One of these days I'll finally rewrite my bot like I've been saying I will. But there it is. There's the project. There's a Discord somewhere, but you can find that in my profile because I'm pretty sure my bot is, yeah, bot's dead. Yeah. Give the channel follow button already. I stream Sundays, Tuesdays, and Thursdays from 7 to 10 p.m. Eastern time, and on Wednesdays from 9 to 11 p.m. Eastern time. Yeah. I guess take it easy. Yeah. Goodbye. Oh, I started recording. Goodbye.